Great. Well, we will get started. Good evening and welcome everybody to the PMIWIC's monthly meeting. Again, welcome. We're so glad to have you still bearing with us through the virtual, but we're getting better and better at this. And so tonight we have a great topic for you, and we have a team of folks who will be sharing with us. So let's get through this. We will start with our membership. Craig, if you're on.
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we're hanging in there right above 500 members, 509. It was actually up since our board meeting, so that was good. So welcome Tim, Michael, James, Kenny, Zach, Baby, and Zachary. If any of you are on call today, welcome. It's nice to have you as new members. So the next slide should be our anniversaries. All right, so lots of anniversaries this month. A bunch of 1 year, obviously the 5 years, 10 years, and Tanisha and Denise, 15-year members. So great having you around for all this time. And thanks everybody else for hanging in there at least a year, and the 5s and 10s as well. Something I've been neglecting to do over the past few months is to recognize our new certifications. And there are a number of PMPs, Emily, Judy, Robert, Kenny, with new PMPs since over the last month, or since January, I guess. AICP certifications in Sam and Heidi with the CAPM. So congratulations, guys. And I think my last slide is the raffle update. So if you guys haven't been aware of this, we started something over the past few months where we want to recognize our members, specifically those who are new or renewed, but also anybody who has a new certification. And then we wanted to kind of make this a little more fun, hopefully more fun, and include people who have participated in some of the events that the chapter does. So last month we included the PDD attendees. In March, in March we had the PDD attendees. No, yeah, right. Sorry, I'm getting confused. It was raffled off for the PDD. March was the PDD attendees. So Dave won. The prize was a book called Manage to Lead, Fixing Your Leadership Style. That came out in the PMI Best Books section on the website. So Dave, if you're on, I hope you enjoy it. If not, I still hope you enjoy it. And the April criteria is going to be members of the PMI Facebook group. So you're going to hear about that, I think, on the next slide. But if you're not a member of the group and want to be included in the raffle next month, be a member of the group, go and you'll be drawing for next month's raffle. So there it is, and
Great. Thanks so much, Craig. All right, we'll turn it over to Karen now to talk to us about the social media platforms.
All right, so this is just a monthly plug for our Facebook group, and good timing after Craig's slide on the raffle. You'll definitely want to on our Facebook so that you can get in on that raffle. Yeah, a lot of good information out there. Not only do you hear about the events that are happening, but I'm sure we'll have some information about our volunteer, but we have volunteer information out there, just also our knowledge drop information. I mean, just a ton of information. So if you miss it in email, you can go out to the Facebook group and find it out there. And also if you have any questions about the chapter or about project management in general, feel free to post those out there. We have a lot of people engaged out there, so feel free to introduce yourself, ask questions. So yeah, lots of good information.
Great, thanks, Karen.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move now to Cheryl to talk about the communications and technology team.
Okay, awesome. Well, I thought I would just do a quick update. I know that most of this information is shared with the board, but I don't know that we've necessarily been sharing this with the membership. But we're going to be migrating our website to a microsite that will now be hosted by PMI sometime on or before June 30th, hopefully much before then, but I've given myself lots of runway there, just in case. The nice thing about this is, as our membership starts using the new there's actually going to be a login that's a shortcut to PMI, and we'll be able to control some of the that we have right now that we're looking at through Knowledge Drops. We're looking at Project Bites, which is a new tool that we might be implementing soon, and we can focus that on membership. So that could be a membership benefit as opposed to just opening it up to everyone who's on our distribution list, for example. So lots of good benefits. This thing is, right now we do all the maintenance on the website, right? So we have to control the content, we have to do the maintenance on the backups and all that kind of fun stuff. And most of that will be done through our PMI team. So this should alleviate some of the overhead and labor hours that are involved right now with the Comtech team. So looking forward to that. And I'm sure as Carlene comes into this position, she's going to be 2 thumbs up because that's definitely much more straight to maintain as a VP. Also, big being away from G Suite to Microsoft Drive should offer the board as well as hopefully a better platform in terms of how we collaborate, share information, collaborate with each other in the board, collaborate with our volunteers, our executive volunteers, and our membership. So a little bit heavier lift there. We've got quite a bit of data to migrate over, a lot of technical debt that we're trying to before we do that. So more to come on that. And a couple of volunteers to interested, please email me, vp_communications@pmiwic.org. My email is also on the website, so you can contact me there as well.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we will turn it over to Vicki. She will introduce us to the board candidates. Not sure if Vicki's already up here. Vicki, if you're not up here already, we invite you to join us on the stage. You can just click to share your audio and video.
I think I'm here. Am I here?
Perfect, you are.
Awesome. Wow, it's a miracle. Technical challenges on my side. So thanks, Cheryl. Thanks, Tanisha. So I wanted to do 3 things very quickly with the slide because I know we have a great presentation coming up. First of all, I want to take just a moment to thank any people that are on the phone, any members that are on the phone that have been previous board members. I know like Dawn is on here. We've had great people in the past devote a lot of time, a lot of energy to get us to where we are now. Second of all, I want to recognize the current board that we have a lot of those people here on the phone, Tanisha, etc. And I want to thank them for all their devotion and time to what we've done is last year or 2. And then moving on to the people that are, some people that have been in previous positions and are stepping into new ones. And then a couple of new people that have been part of PMI, but that are stepping up. They're dedicating their time and efforts to help us stay, really strong as a chapter and provide services. So, oh yeah, there's Don. He just said it was a growth experience being on the board. So you see Craig is on the screen here. He spoke just a moment ago. He's moving from the VP of membership over to the path on president. So he'll be in the president-elect position. Cheryl, as you've heard on many calls and in many adventures through this, has been the VP of communications for quite some time now and is just amazing. Everybody can clap now and say awesome things about Cheryl. And then when Craig is leaving the VP of membership, his wife, who's on the phone with us, has stepped into VP of membership, or who will be this summer. So that's really cool. And then we've got a couple of people that are newer to our board that are up for election right now, and that's Michelle. I'm not sure if she's on the phone. I know Carlene is here, but might be on mute right now. So we're really lucky to have these new people step in to volunteer and go ahead and give us their time and dedication. It's only because of the board members that we're able to keep this chapter really viable, to manage the membership, to manage finances, to put on programs and events and things like that. So I urge you guys to vote when that starts this weekend. I'm going to knock on wood that everything goes okay with that, but I urge you to go ahead and vote, not because we're counting votes per se, but to show your support for these people who've given so much of their time and effort. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. All right, and we have a few events coming up. We want to start with talking about the Lunch and Learn. So I'm going to invite Brian Russell to join us on stage to share his audio and video and talk to us about the upcoming Lunch and Learn event.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hey, Brian Russell here. So I'm your coordinator for the Lunch and Learn sessions. Coming up here in just a couple of weeks, we've got our friends at Boise Change Management Exchange presenting out on managing change, or it will manage you. So we're looking forward to that trio to present to us. If you remember that they also presented at our Professional Development Day. So we're happy to have them back for the May Lunch and Learn. May 26th, Quan presented a fantastic Lean Six Sigma at our, what are we in? April Lunch and Learn. And she is back in May as well for to continue her presentation to the chapter. And then let's see, upcoming
Thanks,
events.
Brian.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. So for the Lunch and Learn, we just want to make sure that you drive your attention there. The Lunch and Learns have been really well attended, as Brian said. Been great conversations there. And then, of course, our May 26th speaker for our next chapter event will be a continuation of the previous Lunch and Learn, just like Brian said. So thanks so much, Brian. And I'll turn it over to Cheryl to talk about our volunteer coordination efforts. It seems like you might be having a little trouble with your mic, Cheryl. Okay. Well, then I'll talk about it. How about that? Ben Williams.
Oh, finally.
You got it? Okay, perfect.
Is the sound okay for everybody else? For me.
You're a little garbly. Yeah, you're a little.
It's my system. Oh, okay. Well, all right. I'll talk fast and then get out. So basically, we have in June will be the opportunity to not only give back. Had a great I think folks there. So I would, so it's to get back to the community, and then also just to see folks in person. Everybody masked up. We were all hand sanitizing, distancing, all that great stuff. And again, great opportunity. If you haven't done it before, sign up for it. If you've done it before, I know you want to come do it again. Hope to see you in June.
Awesome. Thank you, Cheryl. We will turn it over to Becky. Becky, we invite you to come to the stage. You can share your audio and video.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
As you guys probably would imagine, but we are not dipping down, so that's always positive. And I'm sure we're going to be continuing on with our virtual events free virtual events, at least through the summer. So all is good from a financial standpoint. Thank you all. I appreciate your participation. I appreciate your funding of our PMIWIC. So thank you again, and hope to see you all soon in the fall.
Thanks, Becky. All right. And now we are going to turn our attention to tonight's event. We are having a presentation from the team at Compass. They're going to talk to us about from planning to the project, how Compass is building the transportation system of tomorrow. So a couple of things that I want to go through just by way of logistics, and Cheryl, help me out if I get this wrong, but we do have an active Q&A that is available now. It's a new feature, and we're very excited about it. So we are going to ask that you put all your questions in the session Q&A, and we will, our team will respond to those nearer to the end of the presentation. So again, just load up all your questions in there. We don't want you to forget them, and then we'll have the team for tonight address those questions nearer to the end of the presentation. So we'd like to welcome Toni Tisdale, Carl Miller, and Liisa. Let me see how if I say this right, Liisa. Don't I'm not even sure how to say your last name, so I'm just going to say Liisa. But we welcome all of you tonight to the PMIWIC to walk us through Compass, give us a little bit of background on what it is, and then how you do project management over there in the planning space. So again, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Tanisha. I appreciate that introduction. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. And I'm going to share my screen. Before I do that, let's see, and I assume somebody will let me know if that's not working, but first I just wanted to say thank you for having us. That's sure nice of you to host us, for us to talk a little bit more about Compass and our role in the regional transportation planning and how we manage projects. It's a beautiful day out, and I know it's some people's birthday today, so you've chosen on your birthday of all days to hear from Compass. So thank you for everybody taking your time to be with us tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about what Compass is and what we do, how a transportation plan gets made, and how a transportation project gets built. And I'll share that with Liisa and Toni. And then I think we'll save most of the questions at the end, although if there's any burning questions at the end of my presentation, I'd be happy to take those as well. And we'll talk a little bit more. So first of all, let me just say, my name is Carl Miller. I'm a project manager, PMP, and I'm a principal planner at Compass over most things demographics, from population estimates and forecasts to performance management and those kind of things. And then Liisa Itkonen is at Compass. She's originally from Finland. She learned to play hockey at age 2, and she got in her first hockey fight at age 3. And then Toni Tisdale is our resource development team lead. She's originally from Texas and still sing all the lyrics to Deep in the Heart of Texas. And she's promised that if we get enough requests in the chat box, she'll sing it at the end of her presentation. So great, we have that to look forward to. But first, Compass is the Community Planning Association of Southwest Idaho. So we're an association of governments that plan for the future of Ada and Canyon County. And we have a unique role as the regional long-range transportation planning agency in the Valley. There's about 450-ish metropolitan planning organizations throughout the nation. Anytime a community gets to about 50,000 population or more, they're required by federal highways to form these metropolitan planning organizations to make sure that we're really coordinating our efforts and making sure that our funding is going to the right projects based on the planning that we do. So Cheryl, maybe you could help me out with that first polling question. I'd like to know just how familiar are people with Compass, and that will help us to kind of customize our message and either speed up or slow down the amount of information we give you about Compass before, so we don't overload you if we don't need to.
guys. Okay, so yeah, sorry, my system is a little whack tonight. I'll be frank. I've got 2 college students down on the first floor of my house, and I think they're sucking up all of the bandwidth because they're working on a database project. So much fun, right? Everybody's using all of the resources at home. Love it. Okay, so yes, everyone, if you would go to underneath that, you've got chat, polls, people, Q&A. Polls, and you'll see there's question number 1. How familiar are you with Compass? Yeah, just answer the first one. We'll get to the next 2 later. So how familiar are you with Compass? And then if you would all start answering, then we can do show results, and everyone can click the show results button once you've entered a result. And then, yeah, Carl, I can read the results to you.
Great,
So
I appreciate that, Cheryl. I cannot see
the
the poll where I'm sitting right now. So just whenever that's ready, feel free to jump in and share that with us. For the sake of time, I'll just keep going, and then I'll let Liisa and Toni kind of customize how much we tell you about Compass based on the answers we hear. So this slide just shows what our vision statement is. Compass is the forum for regional collaboration in Southwest Idaho. It helps us maintain a healthy and economically vibrant region, offering people choices in how we and where they live, work, play, and travel. We have a board of directors. As our staff, we implement their direction. But our board is made up of mostly elected officials throughout the 2 county areas. So mayors, city council members, county commissioners, highway district commissioners, and others. But then we also have a variety of subcommittees, work groups, and other things to kind of steer our work and guide us to make sure that we're implementing the vision that our board of directors has for us. So Compass has 4 main roles. We do long-range planning, which Liisa will talk a little bit more about. We do implementation of that plan, which Toni will focus on. And then we provide technical expertise such as transportation analysis, geographic information systems, and other work, as well as we facilitate that regional discussion. Anything really that our board, our elected officials see as a regional issue, they really bring together, and we work on those type of issues together to make sure we're solving those in a collaborative and coordinated way. So tonight we'll talk about from vision to plan to project, and we'll talk about our unique role. We've started with a visioning planning, started with scenario planning surveys to better understand the values and the trade-offs of the community, and to really make sure that we're planning for their future, what we all want together. We plan by turning that vision into a plan with stakeholders to coordinate that effort and maintain our quality of life. And then we identify and budget transportation infrastructure projects and services to accomplish that vision. Our unique role is that we are both regional, Ada and Kenton County, as well as long range. We're looking 30 years into the future and determining what transportation infrastructure we need to start on today to accommodate for a population that's growing and for a lot more transportation needs that we're going to have in the valley. So the first step in developing that plan out to the year 2050 is what we call scenario planning. Scenario planning is an approach to strategic planning that uses alternative narratives of plausible futures to play out these decisions in an effort to make more informed choices and to create plans for the future. Liisa, as I mentioned, is a big hockey fan, and this quote resonated with her. It's from The Great One. It says, "Skate where the puck is going, not where it's been." And really looking out 30 years from now and trying to anticipate where is the puck going to be really helps us all in making sure that we're using our minimal transportation dollars most effectively. So our first scenario planning event was a public survey that we conducted back in fall of 2019, and we called it "A Lot Can Change in 30 Years." We talked about all the demographic, technological, societal changes that we anticipate, and what does the critical, the people that live in the Treasure Valley want to see in their future. Typically, when we do surveys to the general public about problems years, or in this case, decades into the future, we're met with a lot of indifference. But for us, this catchphrase, "A lot can change in 30 years," was fairly prophetic, except that it should have been "A lot can change in about 3 months," as that we were in the midst of a pandemic shortly after we launched this survey. We were concerned about participation. People are worried about, how are they going to feed their families or get to work today? Not too many people are thinking out 30 years from now. But we did really an all hands on deck approach to getting public to participate in the survey. Social media, print media, public outreach at events. We went to tailgaters before Boise State football games with iPads in our hands, and we asked people to complete the survey. Cheryl, did you have results to that polling question we had earlier?
Yeah, actually we do. Hopefully I sound a little better. I actually had to log completely out and come back in. Hopefully that's a little cleaner. I know it is for me. It was not good. All right, so response is you have 29.4% or 5 votes that said they were very familiar, 47% somewhat at 8 votes, and not at all at 23.5% 4 votes. So pretty even distribution there, but somewhat in the middle, and that was me. I'm definitely a somewhat.
Great, Cheryl. Thank you. You sound great. You sound very clear.
Good.
And,
Yay.
yeah, so that got fixed up. Sounds like we have about a bell curve of our understanding of Compass. So we appreciate that. And please ask us any questions that you have about Compass if we didn't hit kind of who we are in enough detail. But like we mentioned, we really wanted to make sure that we were getting a vast, diverse response rate to our survey. We used a really interesting web-based software called MetroQuest that really makes sure that it engages the public and crowdsources these questions about the future in ways that people would really be engaged, didn't have to have a lot of planning background or engineering background to really provide their opinions and their thoughts about the future. And we were surprised and impressed that we had over 3,700 participants participate in this survey. The first thing that we learned was people didn't want to take a public policy survey right before a football game, though. So we did that outreach with our iPads one time. We didn't do it again, but we found a lot of other ways. Social media was great. People would take the survey and then share it through Twitter or Facebook or Instagram with their friends, and really generated a lot of response. And what we found was that people that live in the Treasure Valley love the Treasure Valley for a number of different reasons and want to see those same things continue into the future. Wanted to make sure that we had a variety of housing stock, but affordable housing, but also low traffic congestion. We want to see perhaps a commuter or passenger rail in the future, and we wanted to make sure that we protected our great outdoors that make the Treasure Valley great. We wanted, again, affordable housing and walkability, want to be able to walk to the store or walk to schools. And we're concerned about fiscal responsibility. The way that we're growing, is that going to burden future generations with the planning decisions that we're making today, as well as farmland preservation? Will we be able to feed our communities in the future with the farmlands that we have in the valley today? And then we also heard about changing workforces, shopping options, technology. All those things ramped up and were exacerbated over the next few months as we hit into the early stages of the pandemic. But based on that color coding, we turned those into 4 distinct land use and transportation scenarios. The first one we called Let It Be, which we really thought, what if we continue the same current trend of mostly single-family housing and city expansions? We developed a scenario we like to call Ticket to Ride, which focused on public transportation across the region, but especially with a high-capacity rail option, a commuter rail option running east-west in the valley. Penny Lane was our effort to provide more affordable housing and lower transportation costs. And then Come Together was an effort to locate growth in areas where cities already have infrastructure and services, and so we could minimize the public costs of new growth on the system. Cheryl, I'd like to hear from people again. Can we do that second polling question about what scenario sounds most appealing?
Absolutely. Okay, everybody. So again, if you'll go to the polls tab in the right window there, number 2, what scenario sounds most appealing to you? Let It Be, Penny Lane, Ticket to Ridge, or Come Together? And we'll give everybody a few minutes to answer that question.
Thank you, Cheryl. I believe that was a typo on my part. Unfortunately, Microsoft doesn't acknowledge Ridge as the wrong answer to Ticket to Ride. So Let It Be, Ticket to Ride, Penny Lane, and Come Together. And I know I've only given a little bit of details about each one of those. Just give us your thoughts and your opinions, and based on what I've told you so far, which of those scenarios sound best to you? And we'll check back on the answers. Cheryl, whenever you feel like you want to close that poll, go ahead and let me know.
Will do.
The second scenario that we conducted was in the summer of 2020, and we called that "Where do we grow from here?" We've got over 3,000 people, 3,100 people participated in these, and they presented feedback based on those 4 scenarios. And we also discussed reasonable trade-offs you would have in performance. Which ones would perform better for transportation options versus which ones would provide affordable housing, which ones would do preserve our farmland. And so we provided a lot of information so people could look at these scenarios and say, which one do I like best, and does it do the things that I really value and what's important to me? We also asked them to rank their values of these 8 that were most important to them. Growth management was the most important throughout the region. Both counties, almost every different demographic was concerned about the way that we're growing fast. And the census just came out with numbers earlier this week that said that Idaho was the second fastest state in the union over the last decade. Considering that the Treasure Valley gets most of that growth management has been a real concern. But so has affordability, and some of that pressure has pushed up housing prices, as well as health, outdoor lifestyle, economic vitality, and the others. And we, like I mentioned, asked for feedback on those 4 scenarios. Asked, do you agree or strongly agree with those scenarios? And the 2 that ranked the highest was the ticket to ride. That'd be the one with the public transportation options, including a passenger rail system, as well as come together, which is let's figure out ways to grow in areas where we can support that new growth and not burden schools and transportation and all of our other public services. Those actually both got 62% of the participants said that they agreed or strongly agreed with those scenarios. And strangely enough, Let It Be and Penny Lane got 22%. So there was clearly a first and second option and a third and fourth option about how we would like to grow. Yeah,
so
Cheryl.
Carol, this is Cheryl. Yeah. So we didn't end up quite that evenly distributed, actually. So just looking at Ticket to Ride, 62%, and Come Together, 62%. So Ticket to Ride for us was 38.5%, and Come Together was 23.1%. So pretty significantly different in terms of the percentage distribution. And then for Let It Be, 7.7%, and Penny Lane actually got 30.8%.
Okay, great. So Penny Lane was a lot more popular with this group.
Right.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So building off those first 2 surveys, and what we heard in the first one was that people wanted some type of public transportation option. As well as in that second one, Ticket to Ride scored very high. We built on those first 2 surveys and had a third survey that just recently completed a few weeks ago that we called All Aboard. I was not the project manager for that, but it had our actually best success in terms of participation. Almost 12,000 people participated in that survey, and that broke the MetroQuest software record for participation for a survey. It was great to get so much participation in that. In this survey, we looked at how we could provide an east-west transit corridor in the region with 4 different, we looked at several different modes, but largely clumped into these 4 groups. Commuter rail, which would be longer range, more regional trips with fewer stops, with faster speeds. A light rail, which would be both long range, but provide more accessibility and more access to town centers. A BRT, which is a bus rapid transit that would either run exclusively on its own lane or it could mix with traffic. And that obviously would be the slowest option, but would have more flexibility and less capital costs than building a rail system. And we also looked at different alignments, east-west corridors that could function for our high-capacity transit. Each alignment, as well as each mode, has its inherent advantages and disadvantages. But our biggest takeaway from this was people really wanted convenience from that, whether that meant convenience to get to the station or convenience to be able to drive to the station to get on the rail. People wanted to be able to easily get where they wanted to go, and really wanted to make sure that we were building a best-in-class system. We asked about costs, and people really wanted to make sure that we were building a system that would be functional and really attractive for people to use, as well as for economic development around it. I think for sake of time, Cheryl, I'm going to skip that third survey and just go to a little bit more about what we learned from that survey. The first one was that while we reached a lot of people, more than we really even anticipated, we still had the difficulty in engaging with certain groups. Latinos, low income, and young adults historically have been groups that we have a difficult getting to participate in our public outreach events and our surveys. Often these groups are busy, so we made special efforts to get them involved, reaching these communities. But as you can see from the chart, that they all three scored significantly below their average of how we wanted to have them participate. And that kind of led to some of the project management issues that I'd like to talk about. The first one is that stakeholder engagement. While we got great participation, over 19,000 respondents across the three surveys, this wasn't completely representative of our population. And we did a lot of things to make it so that people could participate in the survey. It was, anytime, anywhere. You didn't have to show up at a public meeting, which is kind of our traditional way of doing it. You can do it at your phone, your iPad, at work, at home. Still, admittedly, it's not a statistical significant portion of our population, and so we have to make some certain assumptions about the engagement that we did and whether that really represents the community at large. The second thing was really with scenario planning is defining what means success to us. Since we're not building a product or have some tangible thing at the end, it's difficult to know when things are considered to be done. And there's a trade-off between asking more and more and more questions to make sure we've thought through everything and get feedback on every aspect of our planning, and getting people to having people drop out of the survey because it was too burdensome to complete the survey. So we kept each one of our surveys to about 5 to 7 minutes, and we got a lot of good participation. And then we can move that on with our technical staff to make some determinations about what we're going to do about it. So we really tried to get these worded right, and we went through several iterations of wordsmithing these, but it was a balance between really getting depth and getting breadth of respondents in the community. And then obviously the unexpected risks. I don't know if we can do a presentation in the next couple of years without talking about COVID, but obviously the pandemic impacted things. The first survey was right before the pandemic. What if they had answers about demographic, societal, technological changes? Would they have been different if we were in the middle of the pandemic and trying to socially distance and work from home, and a lot of curbside pickup of products, a lot of home delivery of things? How would have people expected those differences if we had done it after the pandemic? The second one was right in the middle, and it was difficult to do, that same outreach to people. We couldn't go to people at social events anymore, and our participation suffered from that. And then for the third survey, we're asking about a multi-million-dollar generational infrastructure project, and yet we needed to keep that survey short and sweet and not get too in depth so that people would drop out. And so it's difficult to plan around these things. So obviously unexpected risks was an aspect of project management that we had difficulty in anticipating, as well as moving from. So that's really how we developed the vision and how we wanted to see our Treasure Valley in the future. And now I'll turn it over to Liisa to talk about how this vision translates and turns into the long-range transportation plan.
And I'm just going to jump in really quickly. When folks present, there's a little toolbar that comes up that says to the toolbar, so you can either stop sharing or hide. So let's just make sure that when that toolbar comes up, just click hide. That's my 2 cents. Okay, I'm jumping.
Okay, hi, this is Lisa, and you should be hearing me, and I am trying to share, and okay, let me try again. Okay, there we go.
Perfect. That looks great.
And I will hide this and then try to find it later. So again, happy Wednesday, everybody. My name is Liisa Itkonen, and I'm a principal planner and the planning team lead with Compass. And I will be talking more about the planning role of Compass, and then about the long-range plan for the region, what it is and what it does and how it's developed. And I'll then highlight a few of the challenges that we face in that process. As Carl mentioned, one of the Compass regional roles is to plan. And the key planning product for Compass as the Metropolitan Planning Organization is that regional long-range transportation plan. And it's a plan that looks out at least 20 years into the future. We update it every 4 years. And it starts with that growth forecast for the horizon year, and then a vision for what that growth would look like, as Carl was talking about. And it is a plan for a multimodal transportation system that meets the needs of that forecasted growth. So that's really the whole point of it, that we are looking at how we are forecasting the region to grow in the next 20 years, and then what are the transportation needs going to be able to be ready for that. And the multimodal here means that it includes roadways, transit, active transportation, which is walking and biking, as well as freight. And we also then do a financial forecast so that we know what we can reasonably expect to be able to pay, because this is a fiscally constrained plan, and we can only show as funded those projects that we've actually sort of identified the funding for by that horizon year. So, and then the public and agency involvement and feedback are really important throughout the process. And as Carl mentioned, it can really be challenging to get people excited about planning for the long term, but also to engage the stakeholders, and sometimes even including our member agencies, when they don't see the results of these efforts immediately, typically in many years. And because for us, short term is 5 to 7 years. So that is definitely one challenge. So the current plan is Community Motion 2042.0. And this one is a completely online plan, and you can get to that from the Compass website. So it's compassidaho.org. And these are some of the key things in the plan. So there's that growth forecast, just over 1 million people by 2040 in the 2 counties. So this is for Ada and Kenyon counties. It is a plan for a complete multimodal transportation system. It talks about how funding is allocated compared to what all is needed. So that's the shortfall there. So typically for a fiscally constrained plan like this, you end up with a lot more needs than what you actually have funding for. And so there's the shortfall. We've been using a performance-based planning process for a number of years, and are tracking how Compass, how we're doing. So we're tracking Compass measures and targets which are specific to the long-range plan goals, as well as some federal performance measures that you see there: safety, pavement condition, bridges, safety or system performance, and transit asset management kinds of things. And we've incorporated these measures also in the regional transportation improvement program, or the short-term budget of funded projects, and Toni will talk more about that in a second. And we also compile a change in motion report card every other year to show how we're doing. And those are available also on the Compass website. As I said, we update this plan every 4 years and are currently working on Community Motion 2050. And this here illustrates the overall process for developing the plan. We started actually developing this before the current plan was even adopted. The Compass board adopted the Community Motion 2042.0 in December of 2018, and then they approved this work plan and this process in June of 2019, so that it really is a continuous process. So we are here now, and as Carl talked about, we've completed 3 surveys, and we are now working on the vision and getting that finalized, and then we can really get to that core of the plan, starting to look at what are the transportation needs and what can we fund. As Carl mentioned, in the second survey, we asked people to rank those 8 values to their top 5, and then these 8 that Carl had shown you earlier were identified as important for the Treasure Valley from the last 8 years of community motion outreach, the Boise State Survey from 2019, as well as by our work groups and focus groups of stakeholders. And we then worked with our Regional Transportation Advisory Committee and the Compass Board to translate those values into goals. And then from that process came this sort of a goal statement that says, through providing transportation options and an effective transportation system, Community Motion 2050 will support growth management, affordability, economic vitality, outdoor lifestyle, environmental health, and choices in where people live. The 4 goal areas specifically then are safety, convenience, quality of life, and economic vitality. And there are 18 objectives that define these goals and tie them back to the survey results, as well as the previous goal areas from Community Motion 2040 and those federal requirements. We'll also be updating the performance measures so that they will track now these new goals and objectives for Community Motion 2050. And as I mentioned earlier, the planning process starts with that growth forecast for the horizon year, which is now 2050, and we are expecting to have 1,075,000 people by then in the 2 counties. And one of the questions that we've often have had, people ask is kind of wondering about does growth pay for itself? And so now we actually, for this plan update, we've been working with a consultant to develop a fiscal impact analysis tool. And the first phase of that was used to analyze those 4 what if scenarios that Carl talked about for that second survey, and look at the fiscal impact on a regional scale. And that information was available in that survey. We're using then the results of the third survey to help define a regionally favored high capacity transit option. This is kind of stay tuned. It's coming up this spring and summer. And we'll then finalize the growth and transportation vision for 2050, as well as a complete network policy to inform those future transportation needs. And then finally, we'll update the financial forecast and develop a funding plan. So as with many multi-year, multitask, complex, team-based project, you end up with so many moving parts. And if the timing on one of them changes, it typically will have a domino effect then on kind of everything that comes after, on the all the other parts, and sometimes the overall schedule. We are on a timeline really on this, because by federal requirements we need to have a new plan adopted by, in this case, December of 2022. So that's really the 4-year window there that we have. And so it's from the adoption of the previous plan, 4 years to get the new one. So throughout the plan development, so the way that this works is we have work groups for specific topics, such as demographics, active transportation, public transportation, freight, environment, so on. And in many cases, then also form subcommittees from our regional transportation advisory committee. We have one, for instance, for the complete network policy. So we work with these groups to develop the content for, and then bring the key items to that regional transportation advisory committee, which meets every month. And then they make recommendations to the Compass board for their actions. The Compass board, which is made of mainly elected officials, meets only every other month. And they are the final decision maker, and they then will ultimately adopt the plan. But you really need to keep track of the calendar also, and make sure that you have the right sequence for all of these actions for the work that you're doing with the work groups or your subcommittees, so that you can kind of time it right, so that you can get items then to the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee for their recommendations, and then to a board when they meet, and all the different pieces are still in sync. The other challenge is that we're updating the plan now, and and as we're doing that, we're working with the members and the public to get that ready for the board's adoption by that due date. But we're also then on a parallel track to implement the current plan. So I will turn this over to Toni, and she will tell you all about that. So where am I going to find how to unshare? There we go.
All right. So I'm going to wait just a minute on this. So when Carl said I was going to sing for you, that was totally unexpected. But I did kind of prepare a little bit for this because, you know, you get an opportunity to sing deep in the heart of Texas. You do it. But in case you don't know this, you can be almost anywhere in the world and you can say, the stars at night are big and bright, and then listen, and you'll hear somewhere in the distance, boom, 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 deep in the heart of Texas. All right. So there was.
That's awesome, Toni. Good job. So
be careful what you ask for, because sometimes you get it and you wish you hadn't. But anyway, thank you. I am Toni Tisdale, Principal Planner and Resource Development Team Lead at Compass. And my slides are not going. So I'll talk a little bit about the Resource Development Team and what we do there. We're basically the money people. That's kind of a precursor to what we'll talk about. We do project selection, tracking, and also balancing. And then I'll talk about the top 5 challenges for implementation. For what Compass does, we are the implementation arm of Compass. We are always on the look for additional money. That's kind of the backbone of what we do. The TIP is what I manage. We've got a couple of other programs too, but the Transportation Improvement Program is a short-term budget. It's about a 5 to 7 year budget of mainly federally funded transportation projects, but they're also locally funded or developer driven if they are considered regionally significant. So we have a lot of projects in our program. Any project in the TIP must be consistent with the long-range transportation plan that Liisa talked about. And the TIP is updated annually, but there is flexibility to amend and modify as needed, which is fairly frequently. We have a current focus on maintaining what we already have, so kind of a focus on maintenance. We're also always looking for increased funding or to secure new resources, but to make the best use of the funds that we have. And we do that a lot through the performance-based planning that Carl and Liisa have been talking about. And that's become a really big measure of how we select projects and how we tell our story. But the biggest story that we have is we just don't have enough money for all the transportation needs in the Treasure Valley. The resource development team manages the resource development program. We have member agencies determine their needs and apply for funding through our assistance programs. Those applications make up the resource development plan, and then the top ranked projects are funded through one of our programs. And like I said, I focus on the federal funds. The projects that we don't get funded still stay on our list as an unfunded project list, and we try to look through all different sources that are available out there. So we've got grant writers. We try to help with determining if you're eligible, is this a good fit for your project need, all of those sorts of things. So we're still looking for funding for projects that don't quite make the programs that we actually have to fund. These are the ABEs of planning. Sorry, I can't sing, I can't tell jokes either. But we do have lots of policies and procedures. To manage the federal programs, we have lots of policies approved by our board of directors that provides guidance on how priorities are determined. It also determines the eligibility and areas of funding. We have procedures that provide the detail on how we manage those programs so that all of the rules that we have are transparent to our members and also to the public, because when it really comes down to it, the taxpayers are who's paying for all of the projects that we do. So we want to make sure that what we do is transparent. This is the Transportation Improvement Program project list. It's an example of kind of what you see when you look at the projects that we're doing. There's a lot of information that's available. Our goal is to take that complex federal document and just make it as clear as we possibly can. It still can be overwhelming, and so we're always available to answer questions about projects in your area or something that may be coming along. As Carl and Lisa discussed earlier, we report performance measures, both those that are determined by Compass and also those that are federally required. So we show them for each project, and then we also provide in our document, we take that a little bit further, and at the beginning we tell a story called In a Nutshell. This is the first page of our document, and it goes beyond the project list. In this case, it tells the total budget there. We have inflated costs because it is a 5 to 7 year program, so we inflate those to what they would cost in the year that they're built. But we also go deeper into the story, and most of our statewide targets are being met through the projects that are programmed or budgeted. We use different words, and I've been told never use the word program, but basically when we budget, we're meeting those targets. But some of our story is negative. We have some of these red circles. We realize that the interstate in the Treasure Valley is not meeting the reliability targets. We're a little bit behind in roadway maintenance, and it's becoming more and more difficult to keep our transit routes operating even at current levels, much less improve the service in that system. So we'll continue building the overall story to our transportation system, which helps the public understand the complete story, and it also helps our leaders make better decisions. So we'll go into the top 5 challenges for implementation. Number 5, we're making sure projects continue to move forward and get approved. Federally funded projects, like Lisa talked about, are very complex. As you can imagine, there's a lot of tasks to mark off to get through a project, and our challenge is sort of being the middleman in there. We don't build these projects, but we manage the funding that goes into these projects. We make sure that all of these steps happen in a timely manner and that they are making progress to completion. If not, we do stand a chance of losing funding in our area. So it's really important to keep those projects going. Number 4 is budgeting. Much like your personal budget, changes happen all the time. When we go out to bid a project, projects come in under budget, over budget. We have unexpected challenges that may cause changes to the cost, usually an increase in the cost. Federal funds seem to be continually changing. This year alone, our congressional appropriation was extended in the neighborhood of 5 times before we actually got a full year appropriation. So it's this constant battle of trying to figure out how much money do we have, how can we strategically spend it. And then this year we ended up getting additional funding that we didn't even know about through COVID relief funds. And that's not a bad thing, but it is a continual changing in the levels of funding that we have. And then number 3 is fiscal constraint. Liisa touched on this a little bit. When we develop a long-range transportation plan or the transportation improvement program, short-term, long-term, we can only project a budget that's based on the amount of funding that we've historically received. In other words, we can't predict that we would have a tax increase to fund more projects if that hasn't happened since 1993, which actually is the case, that the federal gas tax has not been increased since 1993. And if you can imagine, back in 1993, cars were completely different. Most cars back then got about 10 to 11 miles to the gallon, where now we get, 50 or 60 on some cars, and some cars are electric, so we don't collect any gas taxes for those. So the system is somewhat unpredictable, but we can't add additional funding in our projections if it's not something that has historically happened. Number 2 is overall regulations. We talked about the complexity of federal projects. In general, it comes with a lot of regulations to follow and a lot of red tape, everything from environmental reviews to the amount that the contractors have to be paid. All those regulations are also subject to multiple audits along the way, as well as the end of the project. So these projects are very difficult to manage. And like I said, we don't build these projects for the most part. Sometimes we have a planning grant or that kind of project, a plan or a study. But most of the projects we do are concrete, asphalt on the road type projects, building or purchasing buses, sidewalks, all the things related to transportation. So these are very difficult to manage. And then the number 1 challenge is people change. Our board of directors is made up mainly of elected officials, which is a great thing to have the leaders of the Treasure Valley directly making those decisions that affect our region. But since we take so long to accomplish either a long-range plan or even the 5 to 7 years in the transportation improvement program, a lot of times it can be difficult to have changes in leadership right in the middle of the process. So while it's great that they're at the table and there are leaders, there are guide, sometimes it gets a little tricky when somebody new comes in and their whole outlook is something totally different than we've had in the beginning part of the process. So that's the end of my presentation. I will stop here and we'll go to the question and answer section and let y'all ask questions of Carl, Liisa, or me.
Well, thanks so much, Liisa, Carl, and Toni. We really appreciate it. We do have some questions here in the chat. And so not sure if Carl and Toni and Liisa, can you guys see those questions in the session?
Yes, I can see them.
Okay. So I won't read them to you. I guess you can figure out, just go down in order and reply to those, give some feedback.
The first one I see says, is a question from Cheryl. Light rail from Caldwell, Nampa, and Meridian to Boise. Liisa,
I can take that.
For you.
Yeah, I can take that. So looking at the results from, and really the purpose of that third survey was to get feedback on what would be a locally favored, both kind of route as well as mode. Would it be commuter rail, light rail, or bus rapid transit? So that we could, because the Valley has talked about this kind of transit option for a really long time. And now it's sort of, well, let's see if we can get something into Community Motion 2050 and get some line on the vision map that would indicate this is where we as a region would like to have this, even though right now we would not be able to fund it at all. But at least we could start planning towards that. So this is now, we're now at the point where we presented to the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee about this morning, just as an information item, that this is coming to you back in May. This is one of those timing issues. We're taking a recommendation to them in May, and then hopefully they can recommend an action that would then go to the Compass Board in June. If all goes well, then we can move on from there. If not, the schedule is most likely going to shift. We need to have another board meeting in August to get a decision. So that's kind of where we are. Light rail was one of the options that was looked at, and we will probably go towards more of a regional rail that's kind of in between commuter rail and light rail. But stay tuned. You can check on that in a couple
But
months.
me being the money person, it really does come down to money, and to build a rail system is in the billions of dollars with a B. And we are one of 2 states in the nation that does not have a dedicated funding source for public transportation. It's us and Liisa, am I right? Is it Missouri?
Mississippi.
Mississippi. So that money is really an issue here with getting a light rail. It's not that it doesn't have support, but how do we pay for that?
And then I'll jump in. I agree. Money is by far the #1 issue. Issue from a demographic standpoint is we really just don't have the land uses in place right now, other than a few key spots that would have the critical mass with the density and the job and housing mix necessary to support, walk up light rail. So, downtown Boise has some high-rise buildings. Not too many other places in the region have that. And so we would need to see the land use to support that as well. And we may see that. We're starting to see mid-rise buildings in downtown Meridian, which I didn't think I would see when I first moved here 15, 20 years ago. So there's definitely some push towards that, but it would have to be more strategic and more of it to really support the commuter rail.
Okay. And what cities are we modeling after? One of our kind of, what would it be called? Kind of a sister city or something we're kind of modeled after is Salt Lake City, and also San Diego sometimes, depending on not the California part of it, but the size of it. When Salt Lake and San Diego were about 20 years ago. That's some of the kind of the areas that we match with. Carl, what are some of the others?
Whenever we say Portland, we get a mixed reaction from people, so I won't say Portland. But yeah, the Wasatch Front has similar geography in that they're kind of a restricted area that they have just kind of a northwest, and we have basically an east-west commute. So they're, I'd say, the most likely for us to model ours after. And again, Salt Lake of 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, and we're kind of actually in a good spot right now because with COVID, so many transit systems saw their ridership just completely plummet. And they are now rethinking how they are doing their transit. And for instance, Chicago and some of the other bigger systems in the East Coast are really, they're starting to look at this sort of more regional rail model that, that would provide the service throughout the day instead of just the morning and evening commute times, and provide more stops throughout the day and kind of a different type of service. So we're in a good spot now to be able to watch and see what are some of the new things that are coming up and maybe take advantage of some of that.
I think the second question is for you, Toni. How do you implement plans with community partners?
How do I implement them? No, we're really lucky. We have, like I said, the elected officials are at the table for our board, and then their staff is at our technical committee level. And so we've got some of the best people in this Treasure Valley that we work with on a daily basis, really. And so when we're looking at regional plans, we've really got all of the region at the table. And so I'm not positive that's the way that question was going, but we are looking at the regional level. We incorporate the local plans into those regional plans, so we're always cognizant about what the locals are doing, but it grows into that bigger picture. When I first got here in 2002, it was really right as the Canyon County was coming into more of a regional picture of the Treasure Valley. And there was a lot of people wearing their own hats. And I think now we've really got a lot of people looking out for each other. They understand that, you know, if you're in Kuna, you're not going to stay in Kuna. If you're in Caldwell, you're not going to stay in Caldwell. People travel over the whole Treasure Valley. And so it's something that they're looking at as a regional problem is transportation.
Good. So the third question is, how are these surveys distributed to the public? A lot of different ways. The first survey, we weren't sure how much participation we would get, and so we really did out into public. It was fall of 2019, and so we could do that. We went to farmers markets and tailgate parties and car shows. we were everywhere with our iPads, pushing them on people. Typically when, an MPO, a regional planning organization, asks questions about 30 years from the future, we get a lot of indifference and don't bother me. And so kind of be up in people's faces kind of made them participate for good and for bad. That was one way we did that. We thought we would get hundreds of participants, and we got thousands. And so that was great. But obviously our approach had to shift when the pandemic hit. But actually it was kind of one of those obstacles that wound up being a blessing in disguise, because rather than spending our staff time, going to these events and spending a lot of time, one at a time, we really focused more on digital engagement. So we already have thousands of people in our that get our newsletter. We promoted it that way. We asked our our community partners to share with their newsletter groups and their email listservs. We did some marketing on radio and both over the air as well as digital. And we found out social media was really probably the best way to get feedback. For our last survey, of the 13,000 people that took it, about half learned about the survey through social media. So we really, it's cheaper. It's not free, but it's a lot cheaper way to get this message out. And then with each survey, at the very last page, it would say, "Would you like to share with a friend?" And so we encourage people to take the survey and then share it with 3 neighbors. Most people are concerned about the Treasure Valley and where we're going and how fast we're growing, and so it's pretty easy for us to say, make sure your friends also contribute to this dialogue that's going on right now.
Lisa, we had some radio spots too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we also gave presentations to anybody that would have us.
And
it was great. And it was really easy now in the last year. Everybody's virtual, so you don't have to travel, and you can schedule appointments back to back if you need to. And so we did quite a few of those.
And the first survey was the fall of 2019, and we used the sports talk radio because we figured a lot of people would talk about Boise State football and they would hear our spots. And then that kind of shifted to digital streaming as people weren't really, sports got depressing there for a while. So yeah. But really, it was all hands on deck in a lot of different ways, but a lot of it was getting the message out to people and letting them share it with their friends. Okay, so next question is investment in public transit, light rail in the plan, Ontario to Boise. I think we covered that one. Anything else, Lisa or Toni, you want to add?
I don't think it's not planned all the way to Ontario at this point in the plan, but we have heard support for all the way from Ontario to Mountain Home, but I think it's a little bit shorter than that.
Right, and there is sort of Northwest regional interest in bringing Amtrak back to the Treasure Valley. So, but that's probably an even longer term discussion and way more political at the national level, really. So, but there's interest.
All right. Fundamentally, most subdivisions are allowed to be built before the road is large enough to handle it. Then it takes longer and costs more. Why do we do it this way? Great point. I completely agree. Why do we do it that way? We have to. The way our rules are set up, especially in a private property right state like Idaho, is that we have to determine the need before we can build the road, rather than anticipating that need and building it first. Secondly, Toni, we just don't have the money to build all the roads that we need to. So I think if we had more money, we could stay ahead of things in some way. But a lot of times we have to show need before we can put it on the list, and then we don't have the money when we do need it. Anything else to add to that one, Liisa or Toni?
Toni talked about how we're kind of aligning the long-range plan and the local plans, making sure that we're working with our member agencies and everybody is kind of really on the same page. But oftentimes then, when it comes, especially at the local level, when they are implementing their local plans, their comprehensive plans, it's hard to say no to a development, and sometimes there's some disconnects then from there.
There are some new agreements between the Idaho Transportation Department and the cities to collect funds as those are coming in, so that there is kind of a set aside of money to help widen those roads as they're needed. That's somewhat new, but they're trying to be more innovative in making it to where it can get paid for in the future. But it's a slow process, and I don't know if it's going to be enough to do everything, but it will help.
And Liisa hinted at our fiscal impact tool that we're developing right now, will be completed this summer, but really to provide information and data to decision makers so they can know, if we were to approve this new development, what are the financial ramifications? Have we just burdened us with infrastructure and services that we don't have the money for, or is this going to pencil down the road? And so I think that'll be a really helpful tool to help decision makers at least have that information, so that they can make decisions with financial bottom line in mind at the time. So. And then I think the last question is plans to bring in other counties like Gem or Waihe.
Well, back in Communities in Motion 2030, sorry, Communities in Motion 2040 or 30, back several years ago, we did partner with the Idaho Transportation Department, and we had a 6-county plan at that point because ITD helped pay for the additional 4 counties, and it was Gem, Oahe,
Elmore.
Do you remember?
Boise. Elmore and Boise, right?
Elmore and Boise. So we did look at those surrounding counties because there's a lot of traffic that comes in, commuters that come into our area, and also people who come in for recreation and shopping and those sorts of things. So we did back then, we expanded our planning area. We don't do that now. We could if we were asked. We're a member agency service. And so if they wanted to join Compass and be a member, we are allowed to go up to 10 counties. It's basically the same as a state District 3, if you're familiar with how the states do their districts. But right now they're just not members of Compass, and so they're not part of this plan.
I see a couple new questions there. What do you consider your greatest success?
Widening the interstate. Whoop, whoop. I mean, sorry, that we have got, probably for my team, I'll be a little selfish here. In 2019, I think it was, we brought in the largest grant that Idaho has gotten, at least for transportation, and we received a $90 million grant for I-84. And that's what you're seeing being built right now in the city of Nampa. That section is being under construction right now. So that's probably my biggest success for my team. It was awesome.
And really, that was one of those things. So because the improvements on I-84 in Canyon County were the #1 unfunded priority in Community Motion 2040 2.0, and it was great to get that, actually funded. So it's happening, And that was one of those, wow, we're actually getting things done in a long range plan. It's happening. And so personally, I think my greatest success is, December 2018, when the Compass Board approved Community Motion 2042.0. It's like, yes, we got it done. Because it was a little, again, with everything that was happening at the time, staff changes, other changes, it was a bit dicey there for a while, but we made it.
Yeah, a lot of the work that we do, I've been at Compass for 15 years, and we're kind of just now seeing the fruits of some of the work that we've done. The Interstate's been planned for years and years, and that came through a lot of work that Toni's resource development team did. But I mean, a lot of this is years in the making before we finally see something. So I would say our greatest success is really the friendships we made along the way.
Oh, come on, Carl. Wow, that's so sweet. So
right.
There is one more question. I don't want us to miss it before we have to end. It's what can we do to the Treasure Valley culture or education to get more support for infrastructure, roads, transportation, and even schools? Your thoughts? Hey, that's a tough question. Especially right now, I think everybody is just, things are so different and things are changing so fast. If you remember back, I talked about Communities in Motion 2030. When we were building that plan, that's when iRobot came out. And if you remember, iRobot was like driving cars and nobody drove themselves. And we were like, ah, ha, 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 that's really not going to happen. It's happening. I mean, we have trucks that are starting to have no drivers. We're having all these things, Amazon may deliver by drone. It's like this stuff is actually happening. And so it really is that education. And that's part of the first survey that we did was, how are you going to shop in the future? Are you going to order online? And that was before COVID. So everybody was like, maybe sometime. Well, now everybody orders online. So I think our entire culture, as far as transportation, is kind of in flux right now. And anyway, I'm talking too much. I apologize, but there's just a lot of change right now. I don't know how this plan is going to end. How do we plan for something we don't know what it's going to be?
I think, Dawn made a comment there. It's really about building relationships. And I think I really do agree with that. And it's about talking with people. Talking to people, but talking with people and really having these discussions about what is important and what do we all want to see for our future and for our kids' future. And talking to our elected officials.
Well, Tanisha, I think that's all the questions we got. So I wanted to thank you for hosting us and letting us share our thoughts with your group. Was there anything else that you saw through the chat box or question and answer section that you wanted us to cover? Or,
no, I think you got them all. And this was really great. And I think we thank Vicki, right, for kind of the initial connection. And so thank you guys so much, the entire Compass team, for your time. This presentation, obviously, you can see from all the questions, right? There was a lot of interest here. And so we, PMIWIC, definitely appreciate your whole team coming and sharing and just even the transparency. So thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it, Carl, Toni, and Liisa. Thank you so much. Cheryl, did I miss anything? I looked through, I think, all of the areas and I didn't think I saw any other comments.
Well, hopefully you can hear me clearly. I've refreshed about 14 times. I'm just having a meeting.
Yes, so, we can hear you clearly right now.
Hoorah. Yay. Yeah, so I think we got it all. It looks like you're getting a lot of great thank yous in the chat, which is wonderful. And this was a great evening. The only thing I would add is that, as always, we will follow up for those who attended. You'll get an email through Hopin that will give you a link to the recording. We'll put that out on our YouTube channel. We have PDF versions of all their presentations. Thanks, guys, for doing that. That was really appreciated. So we'll put links out to our G Drive so we can share that out. And then, of course, information on how to report your PDU.
Great. Well, thank you again, everyone. Thank you so much to the Compass team. Have a great night, everyone. We appreciate you attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.